Abrego Garcia, criminal charge to a 2022 traffic stop in Tennessee, where the Department of Homeland Security said Abrego Garcia was pulled over with criminal charges for alleged human trafficking. Abrego Garcia has been at the center of a high-profile court battle over his mistaken deportation to El Salvador. These charges are related to a 2022 traffic stop in Tennessee. Abrego Garcia has been at the center of a high-profile court battle over his mistaken deportation to El Salvador. These charges are related to a 2022 traffic stop in Tennessee, where the Department of Homeland Security said Abrego Garcia was pulled over with a vehicle full of passengers who all gave his home address as their own. The Trump administration has admitted his deportation to El Salvador was what they called an administrative error, but had refused to facilitate his return despite a Supreme Court ruling. Let's get right to ABC's Catherine Falders, who has this exclusive reporting. So, Catherine, what do we know so far?
So, Diane, what we know is that Kilmar Abrego Garcia is back on his way from El Salvador to the United States. He's flying here and should land late this afternoon in the United States. Now, we're told by sources that he's on his way back because he is facing criminal charges. He's been indicted by a federal grand jury, an indictment that remains under seal on charges related to human trafficking. So once in the United States, he will face federal criminal charges for allegedly transporting undocumented migrants within the United States. And as you mentioned, that stems from what we've reported on previously, that 2022 Tennessee Highway Patrol traffic stop where Abrego Garcia was pulled over for speeding. He was in that car with 8 other people who he was transporting. He was originally let go with a warning by the sheriffs, but those sheriffs were speculating off camera that could be related to potentially transporting undocumented migrants. Now, it's important to note here that this investigation, these federal charges, did not really get put into motion until April. That was weeks after he was deported and after the government admitted that he was mistakenly deported. So this federal investigation started when he was already in El Salvador. Of course, this is a mechanism to bring him back to the United States, where he will land shortly. We are told by sources that an indictment could be unsealed as soon as today, where we will see these federal charges. But again, it's worth pointing out, too, that it's unlikely that this criminal investigation wouldn't have started if it wasn't for that judge in Maryland in that civil case saying that ordering the government to bring Kilmar Abrego Garcia back to the United States. We remember
Kilmar Abrego Garcia. They also said that he had landed today back in the United States from El Salvador. We, of course, still have Kristen Holmes at the White House, Priscilla Alvarez also here in Washington, Elliot Williams, CNN legal analyst, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General. Priscilla, let me start with you, just because this has been something that you've been following so closely. Can you walk us through what we learned here? There was apparently a grand jury impaneled to investigate this indictment. Came down on May 21st, according to the Attorney General. What's next?
Well, this was a traffic stop in Tennessee that the Department of Homeland Security had released footage of while his court hearing was ongoing. But it was the most that we knew was that he had a brush with law enforcement and the footage of those police. And now, as you heard there from the Attorney General, they had pursued that further. That ended with that grand jury indictment in late May. But I think what's key here, Casey, is the way in which they framed almost the entire set of circumstances here, before indictment and after indictment. To remind viewers as to the before here, this was a case that began in March. This was Kilmar Abrego Garcia was on one of the flights that was sent to El Salvador by the Trump administration. He had been accused of being a member of MS-13. However, he had been under withholding of removal, meaning he could not be deported to El Salvador. And it was the first time in this case that the administration had conceded that there was an error, that he accidentally had landed on that flight manifest. And it is what was the center of this very fraught legal battle between the federal judge and the Trump administration, as they have found that the Trump administration was stonewalling the federal judge at almost every turn and digging in their heels by saying he was not going to be returned to the United States. If you also remember, Casey, there was that meeting between President Trump and the Salvadoran president in the Oval Office where this exact issue came up, and both of them maintained at that time that he was not going to be returned, and the Salvadoran president at one point saying that he would essentially have to smuggle him back in. But what we learned here from the Attorney General is that this arrest warrant was presented to El Salvador, and it's changed the circumstances to what now gets us to the after indictment. So the way that they are discussing this now is that if he is prosecuted, he'll go to prison in the United States and then be deported. And he could be deported back to El Salvador, because this will likely serve as the basis to remove that withholding of removal, to remove any status that allowed him to stay in the United States before, to then take him back to El Salvador. So clearly there's still going to be questions here as to what this looks like moving forward for him. But still an extraordinary development after weeks, both publicly and in the court, the Trump administration saying he was not going to be returned to the United States.
So, Kristen Holmes, I want to talk about the politics of this in just a second. But Elliot Williams, I just want to have your legal perspective on what the administration is claiming here in terms of bringing him back, because they're essentially saying, well, we didn't follow, they didn't follow the order in terms of facilitating the return before this indictment came down. Now they're saying, well, the indictment changes the circumstances. Is that legally?
Is, and it's
the return before this indictment came down. Now they're saying, well, the indictment changes the circumstances. Is that legally correct?
That is, and it's legally collected. It's practically correct. Number one, notice that El Salvador also had far more incentive to send him back to the United States now that he appears to be charged with a crime. Also, the United States is seemingly welcoming him back because he's been charged with a crime. When someone is charged with anything in the United States and is overseas, the country has an incentive to get that person back. Now, that can only be done with the permission or agreement of a foreign government. Now, sometimes that's in the form of an extradition agreement or some process to extradite the person back. Now, we know that the United States and El Salvador have been in near constant contact about this case and others. And so my suspicion is that we knew the charges were coming, or the government knew that the charges were coming. They got in touch with the folks in El Salvador, said that we are going to charge him with a crime here in the United States. Please send him back. And that process tracks with how other cases would happen. You'd get the person back in the country, try them in the United States, put them in jail in the United States, and then at the end of their sentence, then remove them to whichever country they would naturally go back to.
All right, let's bring in CNN senior justice correspondent Evan Perez has made his way to a camera. He was in that news conference at the Justice Department. And Evan, you asked the Attorney General directly what's changed over the past few months. Can you explain?
Yeah, look, I mean, we knew that this traffic stop where we've seen the video now of Tennessee state troopers who had stopped him and had questioned him, and there was a chance there for the Homeland Security Department to detain him. Again, the allegation that he was a member of MS-13, that was already known in the system, in the databases. And then, of course, in the last few months, they've been resisting, saying that they were never going to bring him back. So I asked what changed, and the answer from the Attorney General is that there were new facts that have emerged as part of this investigation. Now, we knew, Casey, that there was an investigation, the first inkling of this just in the last few weeks when we requested some of this information from Tennessee, and the local authorities said that there was an ongoing investigation, which we verified was actually happening in the Middle District of Tennessee. This is in Nashville. And so that's where this investigation has lived. And so the question, obviously, that will have to be litigated as part of this case is whether these new facts emerge because there was sort of political pressure to bring this case as a way to resolve this situation. It's always been the case, though, that the Bukele government in El Salvador, if Donald Trump called President Bukele and asked him to send him back, almost certainly he would have, right? They have that kind of relationship. But the U.S. government just did not want him to come back. And presenting this case and presenting these charges and connecting him to some very serious allegations is the best way, obviously, politically, for this to be resolved. And so we'll see how these charges hold up in
wins.
This in
Hi there, everybody. It's 4 o'clock in New York. We come on the air with breaking news. A federal grand jury has indicted Kilmar Abrego Garcia. He is the Maryland man and Salvadoran national who was deported by the Trump administration in violation of a court order. He is now being charged with 2 counts: conspiracy to unlawfully transport illegal aliens for financial gains and unlawful transportation of illegal aliens for financial gains. That is according to a copy of the indictment obtained by NBC News. Other news organizations are also reporting that Abrego Garcia is returning home to the United States to face those two charges. We should note NBC News has not confirmed that piece of the report. An attorney for Kilmar Abrego Garcia is reacting to the reporting by saying this, quote, "The government disappeared Kilmar to a foreign prison in violation of a court order. Now, after months of delay and secrecy, they are bringing him back, not to correct their error, but to prosecute him. This shows that they were playing games with the court all along. Due process means the chance to defend yourself before you are punished, not after. This is an abuse of power, not justice. The government should put him on trial, yes, the court all along. Due process means the chance to defend yourself before you are punished, not after. This is not to correct their error, but to prosecute him. This shows that they were playing games with the court all along. Due process means the chance to defend yourself before you are punished, not after. This is an abuse of power, not justice.
Ob du glaubst, dass ich fleißig gewesen bin, dass ich gearbeitet habe, dass ich mich in diesen Jahren für dich eingesetzt habe, dass ich anständig meine Zeit verwendet habe im Dienste meines Volkes. Gib du jetzt deine Stimme ab. Wenn ja, dann tritt für mich ein, so wie ich für dich eingetreten bin.
L'aide française a été causée par la force mécanique, aérienne et terrestre de l'ennemi.
We shall go on to the end. We shall fight in France. We shall fight on the seas and oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our own.
Occasions. They were using vehicles, SUVs, with added seats in the back, floors that had been ripped out, guns, narcotics, children, women, MS-13 members. That is what the grand jury found. Guns, narcotics, children, women, MS-13 members. That is what the grand jury found. A co-conspirator alleged that the defendant solicited nude photographs and videos of a minor. A co-conspirator also alleges the defendant played a role in the murder of a rival gang member's mother. These facts demonstrate Abrego Garcia is a danger to our community. We want to thank the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, our state and local partners, our acting U.S. Attorney Robert McGuire, and prosecutors from the Joint Task Force, Vulcan. Questions?
Attorney General, the traffic stop that we've seen video of from Tennessee, where Abrego Garcia was first identified by the local authorities. At the time, the Homeland Security Department declined to take custody of him. What has happened in between that time and in between the time that the government has been arguing that he was not returnable from El Salvador? What has happened since in this investigation that brought you here?
Yes, the question was in 2021, there was the traffic stop. And what has changed since then? What has changed is Donald Trump is now president of the United States and our borders are again secure. And thanks to the And what has changed since then? What has changed is Donald Trump is now president of the United States and our borders are again secure. And thanks to the bright light that has been shined on Abrego Garcia, this investigation continued with actually amazing police work. And we were able to track this case and stop this international smuggling ring from continuing.
These were recently found facts, right?
Yes, okay. Recently found facts.
To that point, can you just explain when this investigation was opened? The investigation in Tennessee, can you say when that investigation was opened?
Well, the grand jury indicted on May 21st. This investigation has been ongoing.
This case has been hotly debated here in Washington. In your mind, does this resolve that issue in terms of his deportation? And should this be seen in any way as complying with the judge's order to return him to the U.S. and the Supreme Court ruling that the U.S. government should facilitate his return?
There's a big difference between what the state of play was before the indictment and after the indictment. And so the reason why he is back and was returned was because there's an arrest warrant, which was presented.
And should this be seen in any way as complying with the judge's order to return him to the U.S. and the Supreme Court ruling that the U.S. government should facilitate his return?
There's a big difference between what the state of play was before the indictment and after the indictment. And so the reason why he is back and was returned was because there's an arrest warrant, which was presented to the government in El Salvador. So there's a big difference there. As far as whether it makes the ongoing litigation in Maryland moot, I would think so, but we don't know that. He just landed today.
Jake, CBS.
I just want to confirm what you said earlier, that you're intending to prosecute him and keep him in an American prison if he's found guilty, and then would remove him after his sentence is over.
Correct. Yes, he will be prosecuted in our country, sentenced in our country if convicted, and then returned after completion of his sentence.
Last one, Sadie, Wall Street Journal.
Okay. I have two. One's on topic, one's off topic. Maybe I misunderstood you, but you were mentioning, that he had some involvement in a murder, or was connected to groups that had, involved with this other smuggling ring. But to be clear, the only charges he's facing right now are the, human smuggling charges. Just that's the one offense. But the other things that you have talked about are not actually in the indictment.
No, co-conspirators allege that, and we were clear to say that he is charged with. It's not only very serious charges of alien smuggling. And again, there were children involved in that. Human trafficking, not only in our country, but in our world, is very, very real. It's very dangerous. And as you saw recently in Virginia, the arrest we made of the MS-13 member, unrelated to this, we learned at that press conference, that's where they bring young children into our country and they start grooming them at middle school age to become MS-13 full-fledged members, commit violent crimes throughout our country. It is highly organized. It is very dangerous. And they are living throughout our country, but no more, because they are being arrested, they are being prosecuted, and being convicted and deported when appropriate. That's all for today. Thank you. Are being prosecuted and being convicted and deported when appropriate. That's all for today. Thank you. Because they are being arrested, they are being prosecuted, and being convicted and deported when appropriate. That's all for today. Because they are being arrested, they are being prosecuted, and being convicted and deported when appropriate.
It's like my dad. Because, fuck, man, you look just like my dad. Jesus, what the hell?
Round one, fight! Set and last. Round two.
Till this incident occurred.